Yeah.
Okay. Also, this encourages more borrowing. And debt's going to go up dramatically because of this. I mean, why not borrow more money if the corporation is liable for it? Now, that could encourage more innovation, but that's also going to encourage more debt, and the whole thing is going to be built on debt. And so you're going to get leverage rates. Leverage is the amount that a company borrows. 40, 50, 60 times the value of the company. You'll get that by the 1920s, and you'll get it again by 2008. You're getting it again now. The banks would leverage at 50%. The banks were borrowing so much money because they're just making so much money. Why? Why worry about it? Somebody else is responsible for the debt. Now, that encourages more investment. I should add, why would banks ever give them the money? Don't forget, banks are corporations too. So they have the same incentive. Hey, we're making money, don't worry about it. And you can charge higher interest rates. Next, this is called profit taking. You can pay yourself more money. Do you remember I gave you the example of Partridge Incorporated and said I'm going to give myself $1 billion raise? Why not? They encourage you to take more money. The biggest way companies do it now are stock buybacks. They pay CEO and other members of the corporation in stock. That used to be illegal to the 1980s. And then the corporation will buy. The CEO will say, hey, we need to buy stock. There's only one reason for a corporation to buy its own stock. What happens to the price of their stock if the corporation buys millions of shares? It goes up, and therefore those who are paid in stock get more money. Apple has done something like $140 billion over the last 2 years of stock buybacks. Why? Get rich. Yeah.
So I was wondering, I first heard about how the government is having its members like higher wages, they're increasing their own pay to the higher ups. So I assume that this is a different situation.
The government's having their workers pay higher what?
So people in the government have themselves getting more money.
Government have themselves.
Getting more money. It was Congress, yeah. They were getting more money because they were increasing their...
Yeah, Congress increases their pay every year.
So would this be in a similar situation to this, or is this just because the government controls?
That one, Congress has to vote themselves. So it's totally different. So, all of these happen, and here's the thing. That's going to encourage... I mentioned this before, didn't I? Didn't I do this yesterday? Because I was out of whack, so I was doing it from memory. Did I talk about investment banks? So what that's going to happen is a new kind of finance will be created called investment banks. And new banks. And all they do is loan to corporations or to investors to borrow corporations. Remember JP Morgan we had on the quiz? JP Morgan would have a big investment bank. Yes. No, this is all corporation. This is all trying to get big consolidation. And corporations were the biggie. And here are various monopolists carving up the railroads as monopolies. So this new kind of investment bank, there are two different kinds of bank. The bank down the street, you go to Stockman's Bank or, well, I know the guy who owns Stockman's Bank. I grew up about 5 blocks from him. Well, they were incredibly wealthy, but you also grew up in our city. So, the Stockman banks or Valley Bank or those smaller banks, those are called commercial banks where you have your savings account or you might go to get a car loan. That's a commercial bank. And that's where most individual business or maybe small business. But the big corporate banks and the big business ones are investment banks. And they make boatloads of money. JP Morgan Chase is now a big investment bank, but that's also a commercial bank. They don't combine. The biggest today is called Goldman Sachs. And they make boatloads of money off of investment, off of helping corporations create corporations off of this kind of investment. They learn real fast, people like JP Morgan. It's easier to make money off the finance side than actually going through the innovation and trying to create a company that will sell products. Get on the finance side, it's easier than starting a company. Why do you think so many people gamble in the stock market? Now, I'm not saying they're going to win, but what? Yeah, they think they don't have to. Now, of course, that's a big gamble, but yeah, it's a lot of work to start a company. Those of you, like I said yesterday, you have family members who have started a company and run one, you have an idea how much work is involved, and sweat, and kind of tear sometimes if you have one bad month. So, you have these corporations being created really fast. I forgot to add one more thing too. This will encourage speculation. This encourages speculation. Think about it now. If you could buy stock and get involved in the financial section, couldn't you buy low and sell high and try to get rich? We've talked about speculation, and most speculation in early American history was in land, and that's still big speculation today. Huge speculation. Land and real estate, but now stocks. You buy a stock low and hoping that people think that company's going to make money and the value goes up, and then sell when the value goes up. That's why Wall Street, the stock market, in many ways is like a big casino, and everyone's rolling the die trying to get rich off of that. And that leads to a lot of instability because everyone's gambling. So that allows for companies to get bigger and bigger. I think I mentioned this. I think I started with this yesterday, and then the bell rang. Yeah, so I think this is a repeat. Remember, I was doing it from memory. So sometimes I don't have my order down strict. So let's get to the next step. But as companies get bigger, democracies by definition, or anything like a democracy, they fear concentrated wealth. They fear monopolies because that concentrates wealth. And this should go back to the history of the United States. Remember the Tea Act. The Tea Act led to the Tea Party not because of the tax, but because of the monopoly of the East India Company. The United States was created out of fear of concentrated wealth in the hands of few. And what do we call a government where the wealthy control it? That is, where the wealthy control politics is called a plutocracy. It's not a democracy anymore. Now, you might have something that operates kind of like a democracy, people vote, but those who have the wealth have so much power and influence, they can control who runs, who votes, or for that matter, how laws are made. Remember what I told you. Once you have democracy, anything like it, this happens in every country. Those with the wealth try to influence politics because they have extra money to put into political campaigns. You know, most people, myself included, you know, I do give money to some politicians, but I don't have a lot to give. My influence is not as much as somebody who can give millions, like you guys, right? You know, I give a few bucks. I give a hearty handshake. No. So states immediately started trying to limit the size of companies. This goes back to the beginning of the country, but especially Jacksonian democracy. Remember the battle against the national bank and concentrated wealth? That goes back to here. Boy, this is bright, isn't it? Isn't this pretty? So every state's going to pass a law with these new corporations. Every state, including Montana Territory, had this law. And the early Montana state. Corporations cannot own other corporations. That's one of the laws to limit the size. And so they can't get too big because it limits corporations buying other corporations. Oh, sure, they can get bigger, but they can't. The easiest way to get bigger once you get a big company is not to keep growing, it's to buy up your competitors. And this keeps you from buying up your competitors. But remember, what is the goal of corporation or business? You want to avoid, what is that word I gave you? That they wanted to avoid what?
Unions.
No, they didn't want unions, but there's a lot of issues. You put up all your money in a company, you might lose it. What do you want to avoid?
Risk.
Risk. What's the best way to avoid risk? When everybody's got to come to you for the goods. Well, all the workers come to you for a job. They want to create, now to write this down, create something like a monopoly. That's what every company wants. Now, there could be a full monopoly or just a few companies in the market that operates like a monopoly. And so here's a monopoly controlling the ballot box, controlling supplies, and the workers. That's a cartoon from the 1890s. So, how did they do this? To avoid this law, there are a few ways we have to get to. The first way they would do is called a pool. A pool. A cartel or a group of competitors secretly come together to fix prices. They fix prices. And this, by definition, is fraud. Every law in every state to this day would define this as fraud. Coming together, and what they would do is this. They would set what's called a price floor. Everybody agreed we're not going to undercut each other. We have a price floor, we're all going to profit. But by definition, this is weak. I should add, the subways in New York City, the first subways were private businesses not owned by the city like it is today, and they all did a pool. The first subways in New York City. That's part of the reason why New York subways are so weird. They're not intuitive because they were private businesses. So they miss areas. Like if you go to cities where it's all centrally planned, the subways, they're kind of amazing. New York subways are really cool. They get you almost everywhere, but there's big holes. But like if you go to, we should go to London. Okay, so let's go take the underground in London. You go everywhere on the subway. You don't need a car. It's just awesome. You just jump on the subway and go there. I really want subways. We should get them here. I think you might know the problem with subways. They're shockingly expensive, but they're amazing once they're done. Yeah.
The subways in Moscow are really easy to use.
Yeah.
And also really underground.
And you know why?
Bombshell.
Yeah, for bomb shelters. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like super.
You got these escalators forever, don't you?
Yeah, and like it's like a 5-minute ride down. You're down there, there's like big glass doors. You can't see them, but if you look up, you can see the line where it drops down. It's really cool.
It's a little disconcerting being that far underground too.
They're also like really dark. They're super.
You just go that like I've only seen pictures of Moscow. Can you take a bus to Moscow? But like some of London's and some of Berlin's are like that. Boston's are a little better, but America has never really invested that much in that kind of thing. So you have big urban hellholes like Atlanta, where it's almost impossible to get around. Has anyone ever been to Atlanta? Everyone's got to drive. Los Angeles has this problem. You just got to drive everywhere. It takes forever. Helena, right? Have you been Helena at 5 o'clock? It might take you 10 minutes to get across town. Okay, so yeah.
Isn't Vegas specifically makes a point to increase public transportation just because of how many people there are?
Yeah, but they also invested in Elon Musk's silly tunnel thing. That's so dumb that it's physically painful, and it's not going to happen. And so they're way behind. But the thing about pools are they're inherently weak, and I think it should make sense. If you come together as a group, let's say we all come together to fix prices on a sale of frisbees, right? We're all fixing prices. It's illegal. So let's say one of you say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to undercut you all and drop my prices and drive you out of business. How do you complain? Hey, they violated my illegal agreement. So pools, by definition, are weak. They don't make it. But those of you, since you know we live in Helena, right? And you've probably driven down roads in Helena and seen something called a gas station. You ever notice all the gas prices are all the same? And you might see a price that's a little bit lower in one gas station. By the end of the day, they're all at that price, or vice versa. State law in Montana, every municipality, so every city in the surrounding areas, they have kind of a formula for surrounding areas, the gas stations operate as a pool. They have a price for it. And that's why if you go to Helena, all the gas prices are the same. If you go to Missoula, all the gas prices are the same.
You can just say that.
Huh?
You can just say that.
It's state law in Montana to allow this. That's the law of the state of Montana. You have a pool. Huh?
Only for gas.
Only for gas stations, yeah. But other states have it for other things too. But the big one we see are gas stations. And who does this protect? Small gas stations or the big chains?
Small gas stations.
Yeah, it protects small. It protects small because it'll make sure that the big ones can't undercut them on gas prices. Because remember, the big ones are more efficient because of economies of scale. Now, the big ones can take advantage. Now that every gas station is a convenience store. It used to not be like that when they did that law 50 years ago. And the big ones can undercut them because of that. Yes.
And to prevent undercutting during this time, because as you said, you couldn't really complain about people undercutting. Wouldn't this result in scare tactics being used of, oh, you want to undercut us, otherwise this will happen? So,
We'll get to it. Yes. Yeah.
Why don't we just have fixed prices?
Well, the problem with fixed prices on that one is it might discourage innovation. That's the argument. Because if you can't come up with innovation that will cut prices or give you a competitive advantage, then why create? Why innovate? Now, there could be other ways to innovate and still have the prices, because clearly gas stations do quite well and come up with better prices. But that's the argument. And also, if you have fixed prices, big companies can't get super rich. You know, so they don't want that. They don't want price floors. They want to be able to undercut and then raise prices. It's one of those things. We have that's a complexity of a mixed economy like we have. So let's get to the next one, of trust. Now, trust is, let's say we have a big company that dominates the market, like Standard Oil. They create what's called a trust. It's not inside the corporate umbrella. Technically, it's outside, called the Standard Oil Trust. And then they go to competitors and say, hey, we got an agreement. Join our trust, and we will kindly run your company for you. Kindly run their company. So they would go to smaller competitors and say, turn over your stock control to our trust. It's called the Board of Trustees. We'll control you. And if you don't turn it over, we'll get you. So here is a picture of the monster of the Standard Oil Trust taking over not just the small oil companies, but doing the railroads and everybody else. And these became so big that trusts soon became used as monopoly. And so, well, Chris asked that question about what when they would threat. Yeah, Standard Oil, they perfected it. By the time 1905, oil was discovered in southern Kansas. And they went to all these individual little oil wells, these little units trying to start an oil company. And Standard Oil went to them and said, we have a deal you can't refuse. You join the Standard Oil Trust, so turn over running your company to us, even though technically the company's still independent. So it avoids those corporation owning other corporations. Turn over operation. But if you don't, we will use cutthroat competition to destroy you. We will undercut your market. We will make sure, using our market power, that no railroad will ever ship your oil. No company will ever sell you spare parts for your wells. Nobody will sell you land or anything. We will make sure that you can't even buy food. We will undercut you and destroy you and your family or your children and your children's children, etc. Yeah. And did he mean it? Yes. Rockefeller would do that. Destroy. And so what did most of these companies do? Hey, give me the certificate. And they would join the trust. So technically they're independent. Cutthroat competition. And yeah, that still happens today. And yeah, it's pretty clear what they're going to do. Yes.
With the trust, though, they basically lose the business. So it's either lose the business to the trust or lose the business to the market.
But if they go to the trust, they still technically are independent and they still profit from the money.
Okay, so they still get
yes, they still get some money, but they're no longer independent and probably not as much money. Well, this is where you get all these combinations. Once this started, now they get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, I put this picture up and I didn't like that as much. So let's go to this easier one. So there are two different types of combinations. Sometimes you see them called integration, sometimes you see them called trust, all kinds of things. Vertical integration, vertical combination, vertical trust. You control the means of production. From this handy diagram, so let's say a meat packing company. They own everything from the ranches all the way up to the slaughterhouse, the shipping, the warehouses, all the way up to the sale. They control bottom up, all the means of production. That's vertical. And you'll find trust will do both. Trust will do both, especially the big ones. Horizontal, that's all the like industries. So here's the example, and this is what we think of monopolies. An oil company owning all the small refineries. They own them all. And so they take that over and control them and therefore control all oil refineries. When we think of monopoly, we normally think of horizontal, but both work. Horizontal and vertical. So you start getting these monopolies or trusts. I should add, that's part of the reason why laws to do something about monopolies, to break them up, are so confusing in the United States to people today. They're called antitrust laws. But those kind of trusts are now gone. They're not, companies don't need them. But we're stuck with that archaic term. They're antitrust. So the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Clayton Antitrust Act, which we will get to. So, good example of horizontal, John D. Rockefeller, Standard Oil. I'd already told you how he would do that. Cornelius Vanderbilt did that for the New York Central Railroad. He'd go to smaller railroads across the Midwest and simply tell them, you're going to join my train. This is Rockefeller right here. The New York Central, they were ruthless and going to smaller railroads. Join the trust, or we will build tracks right next to you and drive you out of business and destroy you. Yes, he felt guilty about it. Thus, there's Vanderbilt University. See, I'm a good guy. I'm building a really expensive college. Vertical integration, that, two good examples. Gustav Swift, we mentioned him once before, refrigerated cars. He controlled everything all the way up to the canning. He even bought huge amounts, or he bought tin, iron, nickel, and lead mines for the cans. Yes, they used to solder the cans with lead. Just additional flavor. Carnegie, and eventually U.S. Steel down the road, he controlled the mines, the railroads, all the way up to the making of the steel. But this cartoon shows shows Rockefeller and its huge oil industry, but it also shows him with controlling the railroads too. He dominated both vertically and horizontally. It's really hard to put into terms how wealthy, how big Rockefeller got. I'll tell you another Rockefeller story down the road. So that's the trust. And by the 1880s, they just started exploding. But still, they're all violating the law. Now, here's the problem. Even when they start getting bigger, there's still competition. And these new investment banks are taking their money, they're loaning money to these companies. If a company goes out of business, they don't get their money back. Does that make sense? Well, they might get some. But remember what I told you. If a corporation goes out of business, who's accountable for the debt?
The corporation.
Yeah. They might get a little bit back, but it's risky. JP Morgan wants to make money. He came up with the idea of interlocking directors. So he's an investment banker, he's making loans to corporations. He doesn't make a loan to one corporation. What he does, like for example, the different railroads. He did this, he really was famous for doing this to the railroads up here. He loaned money to, that's the Northern Pacific Railroad. He loaned money to the Great Northern Railroad. He loaned money to the Milwaukee Railroad, to the Burlington. You get the point, to a bunch of railroads. They're competitors. He spread out the risky investments to competitors. He didn't make a loan to one competitor, he made it to all. Now that's just hedging the bet. If one goes under, he still gets the money from the other ones. But then he turned around and said, I want the money from all of them. So he said, you want my money? You got to put my people on your boards of directors, thus interlocking directors. So all of these railroads had Morgan's people on the board of directors. They all had Morgan's people. So Morgan's people could make sure they wouldn't go into some wave of competition and destroy each other. So then he always makes money. Therefore, he'll control the competition. Get rid of the risk, bring stability. No, not stability for the people of the Northwest to have good, solid rail coverage and not be treated as victims of a monopolistic railroad. No, for him to make money. This is for him to make money. But I bet as you can see some advantage to this. If you put people in these corporations to make sure that they don't do things that will destroy themselves, and they're trying to get a monopoly, you could have a more stable economy. Germany, by law, their central bank has people on the boards of every major company. Germany's also very unique. They also have representatives of workers on the board of directors to make decisions for better conditions for workers. That's part of the reason why German working conditions are nightmarish. They'd be shocking to Americans. You know, they get 20 weeks of vacation guaranteed. They get years, and then they get a year or 2 years of paternity or maternity. Huh? No, we get nothing. Guaranteed. Nothing guaranteed. And Heck, in Germany, they get a nurse coming twice a week to help you at home through the first 2 years of the child was born. I know this because my sister, Helena, but her Berliner, and just talking how amazing it was. She had a nephew, had a nurse coming over every 2 days or every 3 days. Kind of a big deal. Why? Because that's that's what they see it. J.P. Morgan did it to make money. Japan has something like that. France has a different style, but France does too. Of course, those Scandinavian countries. Denmark's the happiest country in the world. I'm trying to figure out why. And then Sweden and Norway are happy too, but this time of year they never see the sun. I'm trying to figure that out. So let's get to this then. Holding companies. Holding companies then would be the ultimate solution. I'll have this out but wrong order. So don't put New Jersey yet. Put down this. Holding companies are corporations that own other corporations. When we think of corporations today, they're all holding companies. They're all holding companies. These were all illegal. Holding companies were illegal. But in 1888, New Jersey changed their law to allow for holding companies. Why? 2 reasons. New Jersey was intensely jealous, they are to this day, of New York City. New York City had all of it's a combination of, they had all the banks, the businesses, still the wealthiest city overall in the United States, and it's the cultural center of the United States. And just across the river is New Jersey, which all the New Yorkers made fun of as being a swamp or cow pastures. Now they just make fun of them as cow pastures or toxic swamps, but that's another story. And New Jersey was jealous of this. And then their Democratic governor died and was replaced with a more pro-big business Republican governor. And New Jersey in 1888 passed a law to allow for holding companies in that state. By the way, the Democratic governor that died, we have had before. He's the guy who blew an opportunity to destroy Lee's army in Antietam and lost to Lincoln in the 1864 election. Do you remember him? George McClellan. Yeah, it was McClellan died. And he was fighting monopolies. He went out. Life is complex. And what happened all of a sudden? I didn't type this in, but I gave you a picture of this. There's no oil in New Jersey. But immediately, Standard Oil moved to New Jersey. He just set up a holding company. So now they can come out in the open and just scoop up all these corporations and buy. Did everyone catch that? They just began to buy. So they set up an office there. There's no oil in New Jersey. But Standard Oil in New Jersey would be the massive holding company then, where they could create now a monopoly out in the open. Yes?
So the purchase of other companies is legal.
Then, yeah.
But other states are like, they have to do it at all, or they just don't do it?
Well, at first, states got mad. But then when big companies, beginning in the early 1890s, other states saw this, you jump to the next question. What do they all do, seeing all these big companies on there? Every state in the union, all the other states changed their laws to allow for holding companies. Every single state. Some to extremes to allow pretty much anybody can incorporate and create holding companies. Delaware, you can create a company for anything. You can do anything you want in Delaware. You'd be shocked how many incredibly wealthier people or big businesses create corporations in Delaware. All the banks have their headquarters in Delaware. Why? Do anything they want in Delaware. It's just a madhouse. It's actually kind of crazy, the incorporation laws in Delaware. Basically, it's just, you want to create a corporation? What's your business? Make money. Good enough! Delaware. South Dakota does that to a lesser extent, but they've never really incorporated. There was talk in the last legislature to make Montana do that, and some people brought up the good point, which I'm sure didn't really affect that many people, but said that this leads to such fraud, you can't believe it. So it didn't pass, but it will most certainly come up in the next legislature. So, I jumped the gun. See the sign? This is for an ad for Standard Oil's gas stations with the advent of the car. Standard Oil. Yes.
So what's Standard Oil doing now?
Get to it. So, Standard Oil. Yeah, you jumped the gun. You jumped the gun yourself. Esso. That was the name they marketed for the gas stations. You get Esso? You get it? You get it? Why SO? Yeah. SO, Standard Oil. SO. Now, they would be broken up into other companies under antitrust laws early in the 20th century. But now they've merged again. And Standard Oil is still around. It's still around. There's a couple different Standard Oil. Standard Oil of California markets their oil under a company called Chevron. The biggest Standard Oil, still, when I was a little kid, it was still Esso. But 50 years ago, they changed Esso to something they thought would catch people's eyes. They changed the S's to X. It became Exxon. And that's Standard Oil today. Exxon. Because the X's they thought were just, it was purely marketing. Purely marketing. And Exo, they wanted to go to Exxon. On, yeah, we're on. So, this triggered merger mania. All these companies began to buy, so many companies that they just went back. Buy. And it took about to the mid 1890s. But very quickly, because all these states follow New Jersey. And that's part of the reason why New Jersey has all these companies and a real toxic waste problem. Because people just, you name it, they dumped it in New Jersey. You name it, it's kind of sad for New Jersey. Southern New Jersey is actually a really pretty state. Northern New Jersey, whew, sorry guys. You go to the MetLife field where the Giants and the Jets play, and it is in the middle of one of the worst toxic waste dumps you've ever been around. It's kind of shocking. But the land's cheap, that's why they built the stadium there. Yeah.
So with how they bought their companies, wouldn't they first offer them out money towards the company, and it was a relatively low amount for the worth? And if they refused, then they would go into the scare tactic itself.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so were the trusts still around?
Trusts began to go, because trusts weren't necessary once you have holding companies. And so they still sometimes call themselves trusts just because they had the paper printed, the stationary printed kind of thing. But trusts would start going away by the teens. But the name for monopoly trust stuck for a long time. So one more big thing happened at the same time. And this would be a boon for corporations, especially today. There was a court case called the Southern Pacific Railroad versus Santa Clara. And it had nothing to do with direct corporate power. But an addition was made to the summary that said corporations have all 14th Amendment rights. Remember, 14th Amendments guaranteed civil rights and citizenship to everyone born in the country and these rights to citizens. And now it's saying that corporations have these rights. Now, this would be a big deal going in the 1920s, and then people would begin to say, no, corporations clearly are not people. They are not citizens. And that began to go away. But beginning in the 1980s, they dusted this off and brought it back. And then 17 years ago, the Supreme Court basically ruled that corporations are people and have all the rights of people. They have all rights, including they can have a religion. It was called Citizens United. Basically, corporations do anything they want for campaign funds. And then it was called the Hobby Lobby case. They said that corporations can have a religion. And they don't have the vote yet.
So there's just a case in New York that got passed concerning like Chick-fil-A because there's all they put on Sundays. And I wonder if this has New York just ruled that they have to now be open on Sundays in the state of New York.
Yeah, and Chick-fil-A says they're not doing it because of religious. And yeah, but that was state. And they will take it to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court won't agree.
It's just interesting that that's like ties into things that are still happening.
Yeah. Oh yeah. These are big decisions. Goodbye, everybody. Please, I'm begging you. Have a good day.
I still have anything else to do. Okay.
great one. 777.
Please focus so we can get through another. Yeah. Like what?
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, he has all this stuff, and it's like,
How do we what?
you're not here to like top it up. You're here
It's not an easy
to
way.
figure out what-
They try to do it chronologically. I only give a few,
It's
but
not-
like you
it's
got
our
you
fault.
confuse
It's not-
Haymarket, Pullman, and yeah.
I'll go.
I'm going to talk about them here
I-
today, tomorrow, and tomorrow and Friday. And so
I need to go get back.
maybe give a little more explanation. Will help you kind of keep them
That's
separate.
so loud.
But yeah, I know they kind of get confusing together.
They're all pretty similar and pretty different. Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, Homestead was steel, Pullman railroads, the Great Railroad Strike. That's railroads. Yeah. Wow. What'd you take a picture of?
Just the sky.
Oh. and well, and Haymarket Fair is not really a strike. Yeah, that was the anarchists were blamed for a bomb. But I know it's tough. There's no like set way to do it. You just try to. The best way to do it is try to figure out what goes to what. Oil and steel. When I go over it again, maybe it'll be a little bit easier. So. I'm sorry, but it's only 8 points. It's not a huge amount. But I do empathize, especially when Homestead and Haymarket have the same initial or first letter.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of things. You got to find something you can connect it to. And hopefully keep them separated.
Take a little.
See ya.
Yeah.